Do you want to become a talk show host? Do you have a great idea? Passionate World Talk Radio is currently looking for podcast hosts for our Internet Talk radio station. Please email us at pwrnetworkllc@gmail.com with your name, email address, cell phone number, and podcast topic. In return, you will receive a 3-minute intro on air to a live audience about your podcast. Remember, just email us your name, email address, and your podcast topic, and in return, you will receive a free 3-minute intro on the air. How cool is that? Welcome to Passionate World Talk Radio. Educate, enlighten, entertain.
Hi, everybody. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio Network, where we educate, enlighten, and entertain. The views of the guest may not represent those of the host or that of the station. You don't want to listen to this podcast, folks. Are you tough? Do you have toughness to get you through your life, through circumstances such as a pandemic and whatever else life might come your way? You don't want to listen to my guest, Greg Everett, who is author of the book Tough, Building True Mental, Physical, and Emotional Toughness for Success and Fulfillment. Greg is one busy dude. He has coached at the Olympic sport of weightlifting for almost 15 years, up to world championship level. Greg was a nationally competitive lifter himself and is now an elite competitor in the tactical games, a former first responder. He's also the author of Weightlifting, a complete guide for athletes and coaches, and other titles. And he's writer, producer of American Weightlifting, the documentary. And he also has a YouTube channel, Catalyst Athletics. And he's also founder of Catalyst Athletics. Welcome, Greg. I'm glad you have time to come on today.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. I'm going to ask you, Greg, what I ask every author, and that is, what made you decide to write the book, and what would you like the reader to take away from it?
It was an interesting process because these are topics that I've been really contemplating and struggling with for years. I mean, 20-plus years. And I actually started taking notes for this book in 2011. So it took me that long to really figure out what I was trying to communicate and kind of distill these things down to the most critical elements and figure out the best way to get them across. And so I think really what it came down to was that I feel there is this simultaneous need for people to be tougher, to be tough in general for their own benefit, but at the same time, a complete, collective misconception on what being tough actually means. And unfortunately, not only do we have a huge variety of understandings of what toughness is, but so many of them, to use a very broad term, are so negative. In other words, people misinterpret being tough as just being emotionless or being cruel or, anything you can think of, even misogynistic, depending on people's experiences. And it's really untrue. And so I wanted to spend time really laying out what I believed being tough truly was and why it was so important for each of us to not only understand that, but to pursue these things in ourselves. And so what I would like readers to take away from it is, number one, the classic tough guy persona that's so obnoxious and silly is totally inaccurate. But two, what toughness allows is not for us to kind of just, grit our teeth and grind our way through the various things life piles onto us, but to actually experience life in a way that is truly enjoyable, in a way that allows us to pursue meaningful things and engage with people on deeper levels, and to really have a sense of security and confidence and peace to enjoy life. And at which, when you tell someone you need to get tougher, that's probably the last thing that is on their mind.
Yes, and what I really like about your book, Greg, it's for everyone.
Yes.
Male, female, teenagers. I was a caregiver to my husband. I'm in a lot of caregiver groups. I think this book will be very beneficial to someone going through caregiving.
I agree.
I think they could, really learn from your book because, people, you're right, people do think, being tough means, being a little hard around the edges, and that's not necessarily what it means. I mean, I had to learn to get tough in my 10-year ordeal with caregiving, and I'd like to go over character, because you have, character. Who are you? Capability, what are you able to do? Capacity, what are you able to withstand? And commitment, what are you willing to do? These are areas that everyone can benefit from and learn from. And I just really like that because, they say when you're in a tough situation or when you're in a, good things are not happening to you, shake someone up and what comes out is their real character.
Yeah.
So how do we get to that place? How do we get tough? That might be a loaded question.
Well, it's an appropriate question, so I'll do my best. First and foremost, you have to make the decision to. And that is the case for anything we pursue in life, right? Everything we do starts with the decision to pursue it or to commit to it or whatever it is. And so as silly as that seems, that's really critical because so many of us have these ideas floating around in our head of things we might want to do or things that would be great for us to do. But we never get around to actually deciding to do it. And so one of the really critical points that I repeatedly go over in that book is that everything comes down to taking action, right? So we can't sit around and hope for things to get better or to work out. We can't sit around and wait for other people to take care of things for us. We have to make the decision and then follow through with the action that supports that decision. And, when I say action, that doesn't necessarily mean physical motion as we typically think of. It can be a purely mental or emotional pursuit. And so what we need to do is do some very real and often very unflattering and difficult self-assessment, first of all, right? So the simple analogy is making a cross-country hike, right, is to get to where you want to go, you first have to figure out where you want to go, right? What is this point you want to get to? But then you have to figure out where you are currently, right? You can't just start walking, even if you know your destination, if you don't know where you're starting from. So you have to do that self-assessment. And very often, I would say pretty much universally, we have these narratives that we tell ourselves, about who we are, about what we've done, about what we're capable of, and they are rarely accurate, at least 100%. We kind of are very good as people at self-deception, and that's one of the most harmful things we can do because until we are honest with ourselves and we have that kind of mental, emotional integrity, we can't make productive changes and achieve the things that we want and become who we want to be. Right? It's like the classic saying, you can't learn anything if you already think you know everything. Well, you can't make any changes if you don't think you need to, if you think you're already there. So we have to decide what we want to do. We have to, make that commitment, and we have to do that self-examination so we can determine what needs to change and then how we need to change it. So at this point, I've totally forgot what the actual question was, so hopefully I answered it.
That was great. I want to know, how do you get to be tough? But you did answer that, and that was great. Well, let me ask your opinion. Do you think that men have a harder time getting the true meaning of being tough versus women, or is it the same, or it depends on the person?
Yeah, I think it's very individual, but in a sense, I could see it being more difficult for men because we are indoctrinated, from birth with these ideas that, a tough man is this one specific thing, and that means you are physically strong and you are, you can win a fight or you can climb a mountain. You can do all these things that are quote unquote masculine. And some of those things are true. We want those capabilities. But it goes so far beyond that. And like you said right at the beginning, it has nothing to do with sex or gender. These things are universally essential qualities that can be attained by anyone if they choose to pursue these things. Although for women, I could see it being similarly difficult, but for different reasons, because so much of the time toughness is associated with masculinity. And so you have women who are indoctrinated with the idea that being tough is masculine and therefore unbecoming of women. It's not ladylike to be tough, or all these silly things that we teach our daughters. And so it really is individual, but every individual has to kind of get past the obstacles that have been placed in our way, through the various conditioning that we receive from other people, and just our own kind of confusion about what this stuff actually is.
I like that, and that's very true. I know in my own experience as a caregiver, I had to learn to get tough, but tough in a concept of I know what's going to happen. I can't change my husband's illness, the outcome of that, but I can't change my reaction to the situation. Right. To be fluid, to go with the flow of things. I just recently discovered that I was a control freak. Never saw myself as that way, but not controlling people, but just controlling a situation. And sometimes we have no control of a situation. Right. And I think that's, a part of being tough, that you don't let that get to you. Is that, right. Would you say that's part of being tough?
Absolutely.
Not letting, go ahead.
It is. And that actually is one of the tenets of Stoicism, which, I actually quote a few Stoics in there, although I wouldn't call myself a Stoic, and I disagree with some of the philosophy, but that's one of the real fundamental things, is that you are always, you are accepting what you cannot change without actually being upset about it. You are doing everything within your control to control what is controllable, and that which is not controllable, you accept, and you control your own reactions to it, as you said. So, there are situations in our life that we'll encounter that are immutable in the sense that they are what they are. So for your husband's illness or something like that, you cannot really do anything about that, but you can totally choose how you experience it, how you respond to that, how you interact with your husband, how you choose to, deal with the burden and the stress of having to take care of someone you love who is suffering. And it doesn't, people misunderstand this a lot. It doesn't mean that a difficult situation suddenly becomes pleasant, right? It's not a magic trick. This is still a very difficult thing, but you are minimizing the misery, because so much of the suffering that we experience is the result of the way we are interpreting these events and choosing to respond. So, the simple example in your case, someone can look at that and say, why is this happening to me? Why does the universe hate me? Why has God abandoned me? Why am I being punished? And you are just multiplying that suffering by having that way of looking at it, rather than saying, this is the objective facts of the situation. My husband, my mother, my child, whoever has this condition. We're doing everything we can to help them. Maybe we can get them better, whatever. But in the meantime, what I'm going to do is focus on what I can control, which is, how do I interact with this person? How do I show them my support, my love? How do I communicate clearly with them and engage with them and make their remaining time as enjoyable as possible, minimize their suffering and thereby minimize my suffering, right? How do I take advantage of this experience in every way I possibly can to not only help this person, but to help myself, to learn from it, to become better equipped, more prepared for the next time we encounter something like this. So, yes, there are things you cannot control, but within those circumstances that you cannot control, you can always control what you are doing in response and, kind of take advantage of those experiences for your own, personal benefit. And I know that sounds weird, like it's not a great thing, but you are becoming better equipped to deal with life in general in a more productive way.
Oh, I love that. Here I am in New Jersey. I'm sweating bullets, but yet you just gave me chills because I just loved your answer, and you are very inspiring. You're very, very inspiring and motivating. How do you get the average, I say the average person, do you use a different method for someone who is going like for the Olympics or training for an event versus someone who is dealing with everyday situation as far as building a character to be tough? Or is it
fundamentally no? The essence of the process is the same because whether you are trying to make an Olympic team or just kind of get through, a job that you hate, those principles are the same. The application is different, right? So the way that we deal with these external circumstances is through our kind of internal composition. It is who we are that determines how we experience those things. So in any case, we have to focus on, becoming who we want to be, and that's the person who can best deal with these things. So I may, as a coach, I'm going to interact with all of my athletes somewhat differently because I'm going to use whatever methods produce the best results with each person, and that changes kind of based on, you speak to different athletes differently. Some you're a little more stern with, some you're a little more kind of fatherly with, and so on. And I think that's true outside of sport, is that maybe you communicate things a little differently, but you're still reaching the same information. You're still communicating the same information and still encouraging the same process, but you're finding ways to help each person individually understand what it is they need to do, and maybe taking slightly different tacks on the way there. But the purpose, the journey overall, and the destination are all the same.
Yes, I can imagine that. Like, I like the capacity. What are you able to withstand? And also commitment. Because I would assume, I never trained for athletic event, but these athletes give up a lot. It's discipline. You got to get your rear end out of that bed, and you have to have a set schedule of exercising, conditioning, and whatever it is that athletes do. And if you are a caregiver, say for instance, because I have a large caregiving audience, you have to make that commitment every day to the person you're caring for, that you're going to be there and that you have the capacity. I say it's a mindset, Greg. Where are you going to let certain events in your life bring you down, or are you going to kick back and conquer it? And I think even with athletes, they have to have that mindset. I'm going to kick butt and win this. What I'm going for. Is that correct?
Yeah.
They have to have that mindset.
And you said the word motivation, which is really important here in everything we do. And the kind of common usage of the word, at least in recent years, has conflated motivation with enthusiasm. And they're not the same thing. Motivation is the underlying reason or reasons that we are doing something. Enthusiasm is that, sense of excitement that we have with things that we tend to have when they're new. And so an athlete is motivated to train and to pursue their goals. That doesn't mean they're enthusiastic every day, whether they're in the gym or outside the gym, eating a very restrictive diet or making sure they're in bed at 9 o'clock every night instead of hanging out with their pals. And so that applies to non-athletes as well. So the caregiver example is a perfect one, because that's a tough life. That is a very difficult thing to do, whether it's your job or whether it's something you have taken on for your own family or friends. And always keeping in mind that underlying motivation. Why am I doing this? Why is this important? Why is this meaningful? That's how you maintain that commitment, right? So if you get yourself in that situation and, you're slogging through every day, God, this is so difficult, this is such a burden, it's easy to do because that's not really an enjoyable experience, right?
Right.
And even my, my time as a working on an ambulance, it's a brief window into that, because a lot of our patients were, say in skilled nursing facilities or, these other places where you would see that longer-term caregiver situation. It is very difficult, and it can be very depressing and really drain you emotionally and physically, really. And so if you can remind yourself day to day, why am I doing this? Why is this important to me? Why am I, willing to put myself in this position? That's how you maintain that ability to continue moving forward on those hardest days. And again, like I said earlier, that doesn't magically make every moment pleasant, but it's what allows you to continue pushing forward through those most difficult moments.
Yes, definitely. I'm curious, do you counsel people one-to-one on these concepts of being tough?
Only the athletes I coach. And again, everyone is different, so each athlete, we kind of go to different levels of discussion here, but certainly this kind of stuff is incorporated into my, daily interactions with the athletes I'm working with, because these are, national and international caliber lifters who, in this country at least, have to balance a very demanding sport, with real jobs and life obligations. They don't have the luxury of doing nothing but training and recovering and sitting around, preparing for their next session or competition. So yeah, a lot of this goes into that. But outside of my athletes, no, I don't.
Oh, I have a suggestion for you, Greg. I think you would be great in counseling, but I know you have a lot on your plate. You're just fantastic. I just really am here in New Jersey being inspired, just, listening to you, because I think what you have to say and what your book is about is so important. And especially, with the pandemic that we, went through for the past over a year and a half almost, if not more, can't keep track. People had to learn to get, tough with the isolation. And people think, especially men, I think, Greg, that if they are having trouble with depression, that they have to tough it out. But that's not what toughness is. No. I think toughness is knowing that you have a difficulty, a problem, and then seeking help for it. And I think this is where men especially need to come to terms with, you can be a tough guy, but it's okay to be depressed and go for help.
Yes.
It doesn't make you weak.
No, not at all. And I spend quite a bit of time in the book discussing emotion and these things because it's so important. And I mean, it's in the subtitle there because it's so important. And I'm going to go ahead and pick on both men and women here because, we all need to do something, even though it's a little different. So exactly as you said, men, again, are by and large indoctrinated to believe that feeling emotion and in particular showing emotion is a form of weakness and vulnerability that we should not have. And that's absolutely absurd, of course. And so we have to understand first and foremost what emotion is, right? It's an integral part of the human animal and the human experience, just like rational thinking is. So one is not better than the other. One may be more appropriate than the other in certain situations, but really the goal for everyone is to ensure an appropriate balance between the two, right? So we can be overcome with emotion and unduly influenced by emotion and therefore make bad decisions and harm ourselves or others. At the same time, by denying emotion or trying to avoid it and trying to think rationally through every single thing, we can rob ourselves of the experiences or the way that we experience things. That's really what gives life its kind of purpose and meaning, right? So you can ask someone, well, what makes you happy? And they'll say, well, being with family or climbing mountains. And the reason those things make you happy is because of the way they make you feel. Like you're not pleasurably overwhelmed with thoughts about those things. And so we have to understand that. And then, with women, it's kind of the opposite, where women tend to be more toward the emotional side as opposed to men who are trying to be more on the rational, cognitive side. And therefore you can get difficulties kind of getting through situations that require a little more rational control. And so each of us has to work on whatever the weakest part in our kind of makeup is, whether that's, genetic, cultural, social, whatever, to reach that balance where we can experience emotion the way the body is meant to, get all the joy and pleasure out of that without allowing that to dictate the decisions we make and how we behave. So we're not putting ourselves in positions where we're harming ourselves or others and not being able to achieve what it is we want to achieve.
Yes, I totally agree. Greg, I could talk to you all day. I just love talking to you. I have a lot of wisdom. Where can people purchase your book?
Anywhere, essentially. It is in print, it's in all the ebook formats, and it's on pretty much every audiobook platform out there. So obviously, Amazon.com or any of the international Amazons have it. But if you want to support your local bookstore, which is fantastic, if they don't have it in stock, they can definitely get it for you if you're willing to wait a little bit for them to order it. So pretty much anywhere you get books and like to get books, you can make it happen.
That's great. And how about media links? Is there a way people can get in touch with you about your athletic training, coaching? Yeah.
So my primary website is catalystathletics.com. And I'm on YouTube. The account is Catalyst Athletics, and Instagram is where I'm most active, and that account is Catalyst Athletics. And for the book specifically, same thing. The website is becomingtough.com, and you can get some articles and excerpts there, as well as some links to purchase stuff. And then Instagram is @becomingtough, and I post quotes there and stuff like that from the book and elsewhere, and various little things to help you through days.
That is awesome. I had to ask you a personal question. Would you mind if I took a picture of the book and posted it on my own personal page and in my caregiving group? Because I really think people need to see this book, and they need to read it.
Well, so I really appreciate what you said at the outset, that this is a book for everyone, because publishers and editors, they hate that answer. Who's this book for? Everyone. And they say, no. Who is it really for? But I really believe it is for everyone, but that's an impossible thing to sell. So I love hearing people who've read it agree with me that it really is helpful for everyone.
Oh, definitely. I'm going to say this to my audience. If you're a caregiver, you need to read this book. Seriously. It will help you with caregiving, because I find that a lot of times caregivers really need to get over themselves, and it's not about them, but this is your book is a way to help them deal with it. I really believe that. And my son read your book, and he's 37, but he has special needs, and he enjoyed reading your book. I don't know what he understood of it, but he read it. So I'm glad that he read it. And, Greg, I had to thank you for coming on Chatting with Betsy. I enjoyed talking to you so much.
And, it's been my pleasure. Thank you again.
You're welcome. Best of luck and, wishes, and good luck with your games. And I hope you are successful. I know you will be. And, folks, check out Greg Everett's YouTube channel, Catalyst Athletics, and you could see him training and in action. I want to thank Lisa Warren, who is president of Lisa Warren Public Relations, who arranged this interview. If you're looking for a publicist, she is the one to go to, folks. She gets the job done. And I want to thank Jeannie White, who is station manager at Passionate World Talk Radio Network, for writing the blog and producing the show. And I want to thank Lillian Caldwell, CEO of Passionate World Talk Radio Network, who makes all of this possible and gives people a voice, a platform to talk. And I want to thank everyone for listening. If you missed any of this podcast, you can hear it all over again on your favorite podcast outlet. And it is free to subscribe to Chatting with Betsy. So subscribe. You never know who I will be having on. I have very interesting guests, and I get excited about each and every guest. And, yes, I do get excited about doing my show each and every time. I feel honored and privileged to be a host here at Passionate World Talk Radio Network. And I just love meeting every guest. Every guest has something special to offer, and I am so grateful for the opportunity. Folks, in a world where you could be anything, please be kind, because we need it in today's world. Till we chat again, this is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio Network. Bye-bye now.
Do you want to become a talk show host? Do you have a great idea? Passionate World Talk Radio is currently looking for podcast hosts for our Internet Talk radio station. Please email us at pwrnetworkllc@gmail.com with your name, email address, cell phone number, and podcast topic. In return, you will receive a 3-minute intro on air to a live audience about your podcast. Remember, just email us your name, email address, and your podcast topic, and in return, you will receive a free 3-minute intro on the air. How cool is that? Thank you for listening to Passionate World Talk Radio. You can listen to this program all over again by going over to https://passionateworldtalkradio.com. You can also hear it on Spotify, Spreaker, Amazon Alexa, AMFM247.com every Tuesday evening between 8 and 9 p.m. YouTube, Facebook, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, and all the other podcast directories one can find on the Internet.